If you have a government official that is violating the law and you let them, it just gets worse for the next kid.
We, as believers, we have to stand in the gap together.
I went to my youth minister and he said, I know a lot of Christian ministers, but we sure could use some more Christian lawyers.
It's Rebecca Walker, and you're listening to the Hope Within Reach podcast. Here, we're diving into the world of addiction and helping people understand addiction from every angle. If you want to understand what's really happening and what to do next, give it a listen.
Thank you for joining us for the Hope Within Reach podcast, where hope is always within reach. We have Kelly Shackelford with us today from First Liberty Institute. Kelly, thank you so much for being with us on the podcast today.
Great to be here.
Yes, it's such a pleasure. We're excited to talk about your work, and especially this time of year with America turning 250. That's very exciting, and I'm sure that it's a lot going on with you at this time as well.
There is. It's fun. In fact, I'm on my way to Philadelphia after I leave here, and we're going to be staying in a hotel across from Independence Hall and seeing the Liberty Bell and Valley Forge with a number of other people. It's going to be a fun time to remember what incredible history we have as a country.
Oh, very, very rich history, and it's exciting to be able to celebrate that, right? Especially in Philadelphia. So today we're just going to talk about change that begins with us, right? So Kelly, you've spent almost nearly 30 years on the front lines of religious liberty law, arguing before the Supreme Court, testifying before Congress, and defending everyday Americans whose faith put them at odds with powerful institutions. Can you take us back for a moment to the beginning, where this all began for you, in a moment where you felt you were called to this type of work?
Well, I knew back in high school that my gifts were in analytical thinking and speaking. And I thought, well, I either need to be like a pastor or a lawyer. And people said, isn't that like a God or Satan choice to be a pastor or a lawyer? And I went to my youth minister and he said, if you're called to be a minister, it's a wonderful calling. But he said, I will say this, boy, I know a lot of Christian ministers, but we sure could use some more Christian lawyers.
Wow.
And as I analyzed my DNA, I realized I probably would do better at expending justice rather than mercy. So I'd probably make a better lawyer than I would a pastor. I can't see myself sitting in counseling sessions for long periods of time. So I went to law school and really still had a heart for ministry, and I was in charge of the discipleship training for the college students at my church. And I really should have been an average law student. And then I was doing this thing, spending all this time, and which is really a bad plan. But when the grades came back, I was making all the high grades. And it was just God's way to show me, keep your heart for ministry, but I want you to do law. So I got out, I clerked for a federal judge. It's very competitive, but if you're in the top part of your class, you can get a clerkship where you get to help the judge research and write opinions, these federal judges. And it's a great experience because you get to see what it's like to be on the other side of the bench. And so all the big firms want you. I had all those offers. And I sat in my little clerk's office and I thought, I just don't feel like I'm supposed to be like one of these regular lawyers. And I remember thinking, well, what do you want to do?
Sure.
And I thought, well, I want to use my legal skills because God's shown me that, but I want to help pastors and churches and religious freedoms and our founding principles. And I even like to go to seminary part-time. And I laughed because there was no job to pay anybody to do any such thing.
Sure.
And 2 weeks later, two partners from big national law firms called me, asked me to go to lunch, and they said, look, we started donating our time for religious freedom, and we're getting so many calls, it's hurting our ability to make a living. We were wondering, would you be willing to come on, do legal cases, help pastors, churches, religious freedoms, and our founding principles? And you can even go to seminary part-time if you want to. Our only question is how much you need to live on. I was, at the time, this is 37 years ago, making $28,000 as a federal clerk. So these guys pitched in out of their pocket. We started a nonprofit, and 37 years later, First Liberty is the largest legal nonprofit in the country that all we do is religious freedom.
That's amazing.
And it's a God story. It
Wow.
wasn't in my plans, but God knew what he was developing and the great need we would have for it. Most of the cases we have today, I would have never dreamed, in 1989 that we would have those kind of cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot has changed in our climate for sure. What's a scripture, political or biblical conviction that you stand on as your organization?
Well, I mean, we're what we really, I'll tell you the conversation I had that I remember that I think tells it so much. Charles Stanley, um,
Yes.
I spoke at his church, and because he so appreciated what we did,
Mhm.
and we were talking beforehand, and then after they made a gift, a donation to First Liberty because we're a nonprofit, and so I called him to thank him, and so I just want to thank you for the gift, and he said, well, and I said, Dr. Stanley, that the only reason I do what I do is so you can do what you do. I mean, my job is to fight to make sure that you're free to share the gospel and to do what you do. And he said, I understand that. He said, so you keep doing what you're doing because I plan to keep doing what I'm doing. And so that's kind of the neat thing is we're the cover, the front line, the whatever for all these different ministries all over the country, and we make sure that they can do what God's calling them to do, and that's a privilege. In a way, in a lot of ways, you look at Nehemiah,
Yeah.
they're trying to build the wall. We're the half that's like got the weapons in there.
Weapons in their hands, right? Yes. While they're building, right?
Right.
Yeah, we need
So
that.
that's what we're doing.
No, that's exciting. Yeah, we need that. We need somebody to be our protector, right? In a tangible way, right? And so that's kind of what you guys do. You've stood behind so many different everyday ordinary people just living their lives, and one example of that is Coach Kennedy. He just wanted to take a knee, right? Seems easy, seems simple at a football game, and he wasn't trying to make any headlines or make any waves, but yet that's what happened. Um, what can the rest of us learn from someone like him doing the right thing when it gets even, uncomfortable?
Boy, there's a lot of things you can learn. Number one is that that's generally how things work. That something happens in a community, and everybody kind of looks around and wonders, is anybody going to do anything or say
Sure.
anything? And usually it's the one person that stands up. And when they do, everybody stands with them. But somebody has to be willing to stand up, to speak up, or else, you're going to lose your freedoms. And so with Coach, I mean, with him, he's the first to tell you he was a Marine for 20 years. He didn't know any Bible verses. He just knew when they asked him to be a coach and really teach on character and leadership and all that kind of stuff, that he really felt God telling him to do it, and he really had never kind of felt like he heard from God like that before.
Yeah.
And so he made a pledge. He said, after every game, I'm going to go right after the game, I'm going to go to the 50-yard line by myself. I'm going to go to a knee, and I'm going to thank you for the privilege of coaching these young men. And he did that for 7 years, and nobody noticed.
It's a long time.
And what happened is one of the other team's administrators went over to his superintendent and said, it's really neat what your coach does. And he said, what? And that opened an investigation. And the next thing you know, they're coming to Coach and saying, you go to an Egan, we're going to fire you.
Wow.
And, well, he was a Marine. And so he went to it's like, what kind of example am I going to be to these boys if I run and give away my First Amendment rights? And so he did. And so for 7.5 years, he lives outside of Seattle, and that's not a very friendly venue. So
Yeah.
for 7.5 years, he had to fight his way all the way to the Supreme Court. And when we got to Supreme Court, we finally won. But I mean, he had to really hang in there because it was a long time. There's a lot of court decisions, a lot of discouraging news for him along the way. But he was faithful. And what's fun is God seems to always love to use the regular person, the person that's not the flashy person. And there had never been a case in the history of the Supreme Court on the rights of teachers or coaches with regard to their faith. So this was the first one, and it affects millions of people all over the country. And then even more than that, there was this major precedent that had been used to really create government hostility to religion for the last 50 years. The name of the case was Lemon. Lemon v. Kurtzman. And of all things, in Coach Kennedy's case, the Supreme Court said, we're reversing that case. It's done. So a lot of bad that had been happening for 50 years, nativity scenes coming down, Ten Commandments pushed in the closet, this sort of really government hostility to religion is over because of this guy, because he was faithful and did what the Lord wanted him to do.
Yeah, it just reminds me of, God uses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise, the weak things of this world to shame the strong. He just uses the ordinary men. The Bible is full of those people that were, never trying to make waves, they're just trying to live and live for the Lord. And yet they're put in these situations where they have a choice to stand firm, right? And allow God, because there's some battles that we're never intended to fight, but we are meant to stand firm in those battles. And I'm sure you have other examples of those, of people that came to you and were like, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are on you, Lord, and I need someone to help me stand firm. And you help them do that.
There's all of them are great stories. I mean, there's stories about people standing for their faith. One that's going on right now that comes to mind, the the Encinas case, where all the 5th grade students in a school were forced to read a book pushing gender ideology. They were supposed to read this book to their kindergarten buddy. So you're forcing 11-year-olds to push onto 5-year-olds to question what their gender is. And some of the 11-year-olds said, I'm just very uncomfortable with this. This seems wrong. And one of those was little Shay Encinas. And he went home to his dad and he said, this happened. And his dad went to the school and said, well, number one, why aren't you notifying parents if you're going to do something like this? And number two, our child needs a religious exemption because this would violate his faith. And the answer from the school was, you don't have any right to be notified. And number two, we're not giving exemptions. And so we went into federal court, even in a place like California.
Sure.
And the judge said, this is unconstitutional. Parents are the authority over children, and they do have a right to be notified. And he does have a right to religious exemption. Now, to show where this school district is, they're appealing. So they want to be able to not tell parents anything, and they want to be able to force kids to violate their faith. It's just unbelievable. But they followed that up in the school by having a Pink Out the Hate Day to basically have people essentially bully the few kids that had faith beliefs that couldn't do that. This is the kind of school district. And they're standing their ground, and their parents have been with them. His mom has just been wonderful, his dad. So we have the president of the United States appointed a Religious Liberty Commission to look at what's going on in the country, to see what we could do to improve things. And one of the hearings, there were about 12 people scheduled to testify. It was an education in schools. And the president shows up. And out of everybody out there, he says, Shay, why don't you come up and tell your story?
Wow.
And so little Shay comes up to the presidential podium. He can't even see over it, so they had to bring a stool so he can get up high enough to be able to speak into the microphone. And he gives the most unbelievable 35-second speech, not only sharing the gospel, but his heart. I mean, the whole thing was the whole place was dumbfounded. That's one of the type of people, his mom, his dad, just so powerful how they're being faithful. And they had to take both their boys out of the school eventually because the persecution was so bad.
Wow.
When they had the Pink Out the Hate Day, they asked Shay, they said, do you want to stay home today? But, and he said, no, I want to go. He said, I need to stand for my faith. And he said it was very hurtful to be there that day. But that's kind of the thing they've been walking through. But you know what? What they're walking through sets precedent for a lot of other Shays and a lot of other Encinas families. And so these folks we get to represent, whether it's Coach Kennedy or Shay and Cenas or any of them, they're heroes. And it's not fun while you go through it, but God blesses people that are faithful like that. And I'm amazed to watch all of them. We have a person on staff whose only job is to go and pray with, to support, to be with all these families, because it's not fun to go through this.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
For the person that's not looking for something like this to, stand on their doorstep or infiltrate their family, what are the common character traits that you see in the people that you've worked with and that you've represented?
I mean, typically, this is almost always a family situation, right? I mean, usually people aren't. I mean, now Coach Kennedy is an exception because what a lot of people don't know in the Coach Kennedy case is his wife was the HR director at the school.
Oh, goodness. I didn't know that. Wow. Yes.
Fired.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what was going on there. In fact, they actually produced a movie on the Coach Kennedy. It's called Average Joe. And part of that was he and his wife and that whole situation they had to go through. It's a really good movie. It's out streaming now. When you see Shay and Cenas and his dad and his mom, I mean, a lot of these, it's a family that's together. And I think you see a lot of people who are just faithful. God puts people in these situations and they get to choose. Now, most people, to be honest, just kind of walk away quietly.
Yeah.
What happens is when you do that is it gets worse. If you have a government official that is violating the law and you let them, then it just gets worse for the next kid and the next family and the next situation and the next citizen or whatever situation it is, until somebody stands up.
Well, it perpetuates behavior.
It does. They feel more and more power, more and more like they can do whatever they want. And, there's just a lot of attitude sometimes with people who have government power. Not everybody. There's a lot of great public servants, but there are people who they feel like, I am the power. And we always have to remind them, no, you're not. The United States Constitution is way over there. So, it's because people are like, oh, you can't bring a lawsuit. You're like disrespecting authority. I'm like, no, the authority is the Constitution, not a person. And so that's the beauty of our system. So it is amazing to watch what they go through. And we try to prepare them beforehand, ask them for sure, what's going to happen and everything else. But it's fun. We've had a case we've been fighting now for a number of years with two flight attendants. They were at Alaska Airlines, and Alaska Airlines, which in the past used to be a Christian company, but the family sold it. And the people that took over, eventually it's not Christian at all.
Yeah.
What they did is they had a piece of legislation they were behind called the Equality Act, which would have gone into all federal laws and stripped out religious freedom whenever there's an LGBT issue. So there's no religious freedom allowed. And so they sent out to all their employees, Alaska Airlines, hey, we really want you to get behind this legislation, and we would love your feedback. And so a couple of different flight attendants sent in feedback and just said, hey, I'm concerned about this. This could affect the rights of my church and a bunch of other things. And so what did Alaska Airlines do? They fired both of them. So we want your feedback, but if it's Christian feedback, you're fired.
You don't want it.
Yeah, which is a violation of federal law. And so we've been, again, unfortunately, they're out in a very difficult area, out in the Seattle area. And so the judge really violated the law and would not even allow them their day in court. So we had to go up to the Federal Court of Appeals and just won a decision just a few weeks ago that said, no, this is wrong. What happened to them is a violation of religious freedom. They do get their day in court. And so, but Lacey and Marley have been standing alone. Literally one of the statements that's in evidence that when we got all the emails was the head of their union that's supposed to be protecting them sent an email saying, why don't we just put Marley and Lacey in a burlap sack and throw them down a well? So this is the kind of thing they were going through, the kind of hostility, the kind of, I mean, of course, they lost their jobs, all of this, but they're fighting for every person who works anywhere in the country who's a person of faith. Right. And so, it's fun to be with them when the victory comes in, and they can see that what they've done, makes a difference.
Yeah. We, as believers, we have to stand in the gap together. And so when we, as you pointed out, don't say anything, you are just allowing the behavior to perpetuate. And so we need to get it in the court system so that precedence is set and so that these things won't happen in the future. I can only imagine when you started this in the late 80s, you never once thought that the cases that you are facing today are the problems that we are seeing, even with the Constitution as it stands.
No, nothing like, it's gotten so much more hostile than it used to be, trying to force people to do things that are against their faith was not an issue we had in the past. I mean, people had at least enough tolerance. I mean, it used to be, maybe it was, hey, so-and-so's doing this thing, and then the government says, hey, you're not allowed to do that thing, and they say, well, I'm doing this thing because of my religion, and then they try to balance that. But now it's like, it's not good enough for the government to do its thing. It wants you to participate in something that you feel is evil or wrong. And I mean, that's the ultimate intolerance. And so the cases are much different. Forcing an 11-year-old child to preach something they disagree with to a 5-year-old. I mean, who would have even imagined, right? But these are the kind of cases we have to fight now. The good news is we're winning. I mean, we win over 90% of our cases, have for a long time. We've got the best litigators in the country who all donate their time. There are a lot of nonprofit legal groups. What they'll do is they'll raise money and hire attorneys and put them in an office and fly them around. And that's not our model. Our model is there's all these believers who went to law school because they wanted to stand for what was right. And 30 years later, these are the best litigators at the most powerful law firms in the country, and they've done honorable work, but they've never gotten to do a case for the kingdom. So we sit down with them and we say, look, if we bring you everything you need on our staff, are all top of their class from the best law schools, and all they do is religious freedom. These are media cases. We'll have a media team come around you. We'll pay all your out-of-pockets, all that. If we bring you everything, will you bring yourself and your law firm free of charge? And they're like, I've been waiting my whole life, sign me up. So every case we have a team, a dream team, really, of the best lawyers in the country who love that they can finally get to use their gifts. I mean, you can imagine that first time, all their gifts, all their training, everything they've ever learned for the first time lined up with their faith and their love for their country. It's kind of unfair, but after they do the first case, we know we have them for the rest of their lives because they always have to do another one of these. But that gives these people who are standing up the most powerful lawyers in the country. And so to me, it's a beautiful sort of circle of the body of Christ, right?
Oh, yes.
These attorneys are blessed. Their clients are blessed. And then over 90% of the time, we set a major precedent that protects everybody in the body. So it really is how it's supposed to work.
It is how it's supposed to work in the kingdom. It takes a village, right?
Yes.
No matter the industry. And
Not everybody's an eye, not everybody's a finger, we need all of those. And so for these people that are the fists, these lawyers that never get to do anything for the kingdom, it's such a blessing.
well, that's ministry, right? It is essentially ministry in the marketplace. We are called to be salt and light in the gifts, talents, and abilities that God has given us, right? And just hearing about how things have changed over the time that you've been doing this. I mean, the Bible talks about it, calling good evil and evil good, and that's what we're living in today. And so for somebody that might not be facing one of these situations yet, but is afraid to share their faith, right? What's some encouragement that you can give them, to not shy back from sharing their faith, or if they notice something that's happening seems small, but notice something, how should they respond to that?
Yeah, I think one of the main things is people kind of feel like, number one, they're all alone. And number two, they don't know what the law is. And that's easily remedied, right?
Sure.
Which is number one. I mean, for instance, we have an email that we send out every Friday to only the people who ask for it. It's almost 1 million people that get that every week. It's just, if you go to you spell out firstliberty.org, it says be an insider and you get that email.
Perfect.
And that allows people to pray for those cases they're seeing, but it also allows them to realize, oh my gosh, another win, another win, another win. And they start to realize, hey, I have these freedoms. I have this right. I know what the law is. So it's going to be hard to intimidate me out of my freedoms, And so they also know, though, maybe it's something they haven't seen. And they go, but I got a place I can call and I can just ask them. And they have information on what is the law in this situation? What are my options? So in other words, they don't have to worry about, they're just all alone and they don't know the answers.
Sure.
The answers are waiting for them, and the law is on their side. This country was built on religious freedom. There's not only the Constitution, there are all kinds of statutes and laws protecting religious freedom. So, the enemy always works with the same things, lies and fear. And
so true.
That's what we can take that away. I always tell people, if you feel like the Holy Spirit's leading you to do something, then don't allow yourself to be intimidated out of that. If you need more information, if you just want to ask, call us. We're happy to walk you through that, because it's very, very rare when you can't do something that you are being led to do. And we can answer those questions. But so many people, they're scared. They don't know. They think they're going to get in trouble. They think somebody's going to get in trouble. They think whatever, and it's just not true. So I think one thing is, even just getting that email every Friday is a way to see victories every week and see. We had 471 cases last year, and again, we went over 90% of the cases. We have had 11 cases at the Supreme Court in the last 8 years. And our record is 11-0.
That's incredible.
So
that's incredible.
All is on our side, and God is doing some tremendous things right now in this arena. He is really opening things up. I'll say this: every American alive today has more religious freedom than they've ever had in their lifetime.
Wow!
Because of a lot of these decisions that have been
Senate presidents.
Yeah, we are, and we're opening. Back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, we had a lot of decisions that were really hostile. They're not what the Constitution says, because the Constitution's very pro-religious freedom, and we're dismantling all those cases now. So we are really opening up religious freedom for people. And I've been asking the Lord, why are you doing this? Right? I know you're doing this because what's happening right now is so dramatic. And I used to wonder, is it because it's just going to get so hostile that we need the protection, or is there like a third great awakening coming? And the last time I was with Charlie Kirk, who's a friend of mine, about 2 months before, he was assassinated, we had both come to the same conclusion, that a third great awakening had started.
I agree.
That these young people are coming. And so the reason we are winning so many of these cases and opening things up is because they're coming behind us, and God is opening the gates ahead of them.
Amen.
And so it's a time to, do what the Lord's leading you to do. Don't let somebody intimidate you out of, talking about the Lord, or including in your workplace or anywhere else. We've had victory after victory in all of these different cases, and you have the freedom. If God's calling you to do it, don't allow yourself to be feared out of doing it.
So it's just arming ourselves with knowledge, because the law is on our side, the Constitution is on our side, and we know that. And just being able to celebrate 250 years of America, and that Constitution is there to protect us, and that's great. Now, you brought something with you, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Well, this is fresh, because we just
Yes, please.
handed this to the President of the United States in the Oval Office on Friday.
That's incredible.
the president created a religious liberty commission. We've never had one. He wanted regular people. So it's like, but that represent different facets of society. So it's like Franklin Graham was on there. Cardinal Dolan's on there. But Dr. Phil's on there.
It's great.
And Ben Carson's on there. And anyway, there's I think 11 of us. And we took testimony from people all over the country to find out what is happening. And just some horrible stories that like Shay's testimony. There were a lot of those, over 100 witnesses. And after those seven hearings and the back and forth, you can see what the problems are and what some solutions could be. And so this is the report with the recommendations to the president. And there are people who would criticize the president for things, but I don't think inaction is one of the things that he gets criticized
No,
for.
I would say not. I would say not.
So I think that he will take action.
That's great.
And real opportunity to really change the future with regard to religious freedom.
It's incredible.
If you poll people, religious freedom, I mean, it's like 70, 80% of the country is totally in favor of religious freedom. And so there's just a lot of, as I'm at Adult and Teen Challenge, I mean, the whole reason they had the success that they have is because it's not a secular approach, right?
Correct.
But many think, well, but if I'm a part of a government program, I can't do that stuff. No, you're wrong. You can. We have Supreme Court victories that say you can. And a lot of people just don't know about it. So that kind of stuff is covered in here, because what we found a lot was the law is really good in a lot of areas, but people don't know it's good. They just don't know their rights. They're confused. They hear these phrases like separation of church and state, which is not in the Constitution. And it's just been mangled to all, you can imagine. And so they're like, we have got to educate people on what their rights are in all these different departments, in the hospitals, in the medical field, in education. Teachers should be trained. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff we found out in here where just people are just scared and they make horrible mistakes and they take away people's freedoms. And so this is going to be a great opportunity to, have a president and administration. They're going to put these things into place. Some of these things hopefully will last beyond, one president to the next, because everybody should be in favor of this. Some of them we're asking for them to take some legal action to set some precedent with the Department of Justice that can last throughout all future presidents. So it's a neat opportunity. We've never had this before. If you go through the whole thing, we probably have over 100 recommendations. We have 12 main ones. But I'd say at the very heart of it is educating people, because there's so much misinformation and confusion and fear that is not based upon truth. And so hopefully we'll start seeing changes quickly in a lot of different areas.
Incredible.
We covered all from the military to the schools to private employment to you name it. We covered all of it with the testimony and with the recommendations.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like that God is using you, Kelly, and your organization and all the people and volunteers and the lawyers to do great work for the kingdom.
Well,
It's incredible.
it's a privilege. I mean, what the Lord's doing right now, if you're in the religious liberty arena and you're not having fun, then you're not awake, because to watch God's hand move the way it's moving right now is just amazing. I'm just, case after case after case. I mean, we used to average year about 6,000 to 7,000 requests. Supreme Court took 56 cases last year.
Wow.
So your chance of getting the case taken, not good. They didn't take one, they didn't take two, they didn't take three. We won 4 Supreme Court cases over 13 months on religious freedom. So it just tells you how what's going on now is not normal. And it's a move of God to open things up. But you know what? What a shame it would be if God's opening things up and then we refuse to take advantage of what he's opening up.
That's right.
So that's the call on us.
Amen. I love it. I love it. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We'll share all your information on the screen and make sure that if anybody is facing any trials in their life and want to take a stand and have someone to stand with them, we'll make sure they have that information. Before we go, we always like to end the episode on a little nugget of hope. Will you share something with our viewers directly, a little nugget of hope to keep in regards to religious freedom?
We've never been in a time like this in the history of our country where we've been advancing religious freedom like we are right now. It's just miraculous to watch what God is doing. And so we're having case after case after case after case where we're winning all these cases. Trying to think of that. We just won a case just a few months ago with a guy who all he was trying to do was he had come to the Lord because somebody shared with him in a public park. So he goes on the weekend to the park and shares with people. He feels like he needs to carry it forward. And they created a law that said you have to be in a little 10 by 10 box if you're going to engage in free speech in the park.
Okay.
And so he walks out of the box and they handcuffed him.
Wow.
And, so I bet he was discouraged because, he got fined and he paid the fine and then went into federal court. And then the judge said, no, I'm sorry, we can't hear your case. And then the Court of Appeals said, nope, we're not going to hear your case.
Amen.
And, but we just got a decision from the United States Supreme Court 9-0 that says, oh, yes, you will. And so you just got to be faithful, like Gabe Olivier in that case. And, and he's going to be back out there sharing the gospel when we're done. And this won't be happening to other people. So just realize the laws are on your side. There are free attorneys ready to help you. And don't be intimidated because everything's on your side.
Yeah. It's just stand firm. The battle is not ours, but God's. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate it. Just appreciate all the work that you're doing, and we'll be praying for you that God will continue to use you and all the people that you work with to uphold the faith.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching the Hope Within Reach podcast. And as always, hope is within reach.
Thank you for watching the Hope Within Reach podcast today. If you liked today's conversation, consider leaving a like, a comment, and a follow. Let's get the word out there. Hope is within reach.